sir.
Hey, Vishwash, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Finally here. We've
Yes,
been planning this
fine.
for a long time.
Yes, finally here. And I'm very glad to have you in my podcast. There were a lot of outbreaks of something which is more emotional, something which was not supposed to happen. But yeah, somehow I got a chance to do a podcast with you. I'm so blessed today because it's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's fourth for you, fifth for me, but I don't care because I just wanted to do with you, and I'm just happy that I'm doing my podcast with you.
It's 2 o'clock in the morning there.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, you are truly a trooper. I hope I can measure up to your expectations given how much you are giving up.
Yeah. No problem, sir. No problem. It's because uh not because the books which are given as a bible to the big data mba or anything, but you as a person has influenced me. It's been not that long that I knew you, but at the end of the day, when I got to know you as a person, when I learned about you as a person, I told, okay, if world ain't going to give me any chance for me to be who I am, then I'm going to be who I am and show this world what I am actually. And thank you so
Amen.
much. Amen. Thank you so much for that motivation which you gave to me and to the world. And let's get started, sir.
That's great. Well, we're all in this together, right? It's a
Yeah.
very small world, small planet, and in the end, we all stand on each other's shoulders. So I'm glad we are part of the same community.
Yes. Let's start with a question, sir.
Yep.
There has been a lot, things have been going on worse these days. And also, there has been speculations here and there. The countries which were poor are just going to be poor. The countries which are going to be rich are just going to be rich. That's what famous quotes say today. I just want you to give me that. What's the fate of working in these countries, and also the people and the hustle which they can really get through? Because we have seen economics have really broken down into pieces, and yes, there is a new disruption in the market. GameStop already had the rise. Internet was just an factor which just affected it, but like corona affected huge and a humongous deal. It's just like trillions and trillions of dollars of losses which every country saw. What's
Yep.
the fate of the world now?
Wow. What a great question. And we could certainly settle for that prediction that the rich countries are going to get richer and the poor countries are going to get poorer. But I think that's bullshit. And I think the reason why that is that we are entering a time where the individual has never been more powerful. You made comment about the GameStop such, right? Where a group of individuals took on and took on and beat much better financed and organized and a bunch of brainiacs and hedge funds, and the individuals took them on. I believe that we are entering a period where the individual will be as powerful as ever, but it won't be purely on understanding technology. Um, you raised a good point about transparency, about being motivated, about being who you are. I think that's powerful stuff, because when you're transparent and when you are who you are, then you are resilient to change. And change is the normal, right? Change isn't, we just got through the COVID, and in 2021 something different will hit us, right? We don't know what it is. Maybe aliens landing on the planet and demanding their world back, whatever it might be, right? But when you're a strong individual who seeks out and builds relationships with others, you create this kind of centrical force of the people you work with, and the bonds become so strong that they move across country borders. It doesn't matter if you're in the US or China or India or Ireland. These people are building bonds that are irregardless of the country borders. And so Will rich countries get richer and poor countries get poorer? Maybe, but there's nothing that stops a poor person from also becoming the same as a rich person. That we have an environment today and moving towards where hopefully everybody has equal opportunities. It doesn't guarantee equal outcomes, but if we have equal opportunities, if we take and empower everybody, then we're going to raise up the whole world to accomplish and challenge some of these onerous problems that we're facing.
I just wanted to ask you this one question because you have written a book on economics, big data, and it's no big deal tomorrow because modules are going to change. TensorFlow is not going to remain the same at the end of the day. sklearn is going to change. Keras is going to change. But it's just a standard Bible for everybody. Your book is just a standard Bible for everybody. I just want to ask you this one question. What will be the fate of AI tomorrow? Will it really going to change our lives? Because it's just stashed with algorithms. It's nothing else. Because we have been seeing sparsity now. We have been seeing sparsity involved in economics also today. But to some extent, it doesn't make sense because sparse is all zeros, but economics is number crunching. What's the fate of economics tomorrow with an influence of AI?
I actually think that the world of economics is going through transformation as well. I've recently started writing about a concept that I'm going to claim as mine, this idea of nanoeconomics. And nanoeconomics is about the economics of the individual propensities. That is, what is it the individual is likely to do and likely to want? Now, we've had macroeconomics, which is, looking at the world at a grand aggregate level. And we have microeconomics, which is still economics based on averages. I believe what's happening in economics is a transformation to the economics of one, right? We're getting down to understanding the propensities and inclinations and tendencies of each individual. And when we start doing that, Vishwas, when we start embracing the economics of one, what happens is that these overly generalized policy and operational decisions that are designed to serve the average and actually serve no one, we move beyond that, right? We get down to precision welfare programs and personalized healthcare and very granular things that allows us to optimize how we spend our resources and drive much better impact. It really gets summarized nicely in my work around the economic value curve and how we can take the economic value curve and we can change how wealth is created by getting down and understanding that nanoeconomics, again, the economics of the individual.
That's true. Because we have seen lot and lot of witnesses here and there that not just Bill Gates being just a son of a carpenter, being the richest man one day, and now it's the fate of Elon Musk to be the richest man, and then the Jeff Bezos coming back. It's just a game of probability. I just wanted to ask you this one question because I feel to some extent we are just living in a world of simulation. The world is just a simulation at the end of the day. I don't know tomorrow whether I'll be breathing because I've witnessed the things. I've witnessed people who are just told that I'm going to live for another 10 years and I've not lived for 10 seconds in front of me because I've been seeing how economics also has been shredded because I saw companies which the beta went from a huge deal to no deal one day. So I just wanted to ask you this one question. What's the deal of probability in the machines which we are building for the economics today? Because it's all probability now. So what's that all about?
Well, let me go back to a point you first made. Are we living in a simulation, right? Which is a really interesting question. It reminds me of the movie Matrix, right? They talk about that we're living in this world controlled by machines. And I could argue, I'm going to go way off script on this one. So I could argue that based on your religious beliefs, that yeah, we do live in a simulation, right? That some of us believe that there is an afterlife, that there is something bigger than what we have today. And all we're doing today in this world is living through a simulation where problems are being thrown at us and we're being tested to see what our character's about and our resilience, right? We're constantly being pushed and shoved. And it's a it could be seen as a simulation in preparation for what's next. Now, I'm not a foreseer of what's next, but I am a believer that there is something next. I'm a believer that what I do on this planet holds consequences to where I go next. So I'm not sure if that's a question you meant to ask, because it is interesting to think about. We do live in a simulation, and much like in the world of the Matrix, it's all machine driven. I don't believe that we live in a world driven by machines, and I actually don't think machines are going to take over. I actually don't think so at all. But I do think, based on one's religious beliefs, you could certainly say that we are in this world living in a simulation.
Saw an humongous way in which the deep learning has really given that trend of an community workflow today. Because I do conduct workshops, I do conduct a lot of things outside of my college, outside of this home which I'm living now. But I just feel that it's just that buzzword which is just making them go behind the technology. It's not that thrill of working in it. What's that one thing? I just wanted to ask you this one question, because what led deep learning as a community workflow? Is that the concept, or else is it the thrill of working?
Well, deep learning's real, and what we can do with deep learning is
But
is
neural
pretty
networks are still the black boxes.
true. Though we are coming up with better algorithms like the SHAP and things like that help us to do explainable AI, which is important. But I hope I don't forget this one point. But the point I wanted to come back to is, I think as we see more and more deep learning and machine learning and reinforcement learning aspects taking on more and more of our daily jobs, I think what's going to happen is it's going to force humans to have to become more human. Now, the most basic of human capabilities, there's two of them, right? There's compassion and there's curiosity. These are human characteristics that machines probably will never have. And so I'm going to go on the one on curiosity, because I think what differentiates us in the long run from machines is our ability to be curious about things. And you think about, as we were kids, we were always, tinkering with things, taking things apart. Took the radio, took it apart, tried to put it back together. Oops, there's a couple extra parts laying out. Dad's not happy about that. We had a natural sense of curiosity of trying to understand, how did things work, right? And learning from that. And then we go into our school systems, our education programs, and we have standardized testing and standardized curriculums. And, everybody goes through the 5th and 6th and 10th, and we all go through the same programs. And what happens is we replace curiosity with rote methods. We wipe out the single most important aspect of what makes us different from machines is curiosity. And so I think what's going to happen, one of the big changes I think is going to happen, is a realization in the education system that instead of squashing out curiosity through standardized testing, that we find a way to nurture that we take what people do naturally and we leverage that. Let the machines do what machines do, right? Machines want to dig through mines and harvest, and they, and dig for coal. If they want to go through sewers and try to find leaks, and those are things that are great at it, right? They can look at a CAT scan and they're much more effective at detecting what kind of cancer it might be than a human is. Let the machines do that. But let's try to figure out and understand why. Get back to the understanding of why do things work the way they do. Because if we understand why, then we have a chance to influence the environment in which we live.
I just wanted to ask you this one question, because AGI is in a verge of building. We are on the verge of building an AGI system. I just wanted to ask you this one question. What's that answer that we can get from an AGI? Or else, what are those questions which an AGI is capable of answering tomorrow?
So I don't think AGI is going to give us answers as well as much as it's going to free us up from other tasks so we can spend time contemplating the big questions, the big answers. I don't think that, as we know from deep learning today, it really only learns from the data set it has, right? If it's not in the data set, it can't learn it. That's okay, right? That's why us humans exist. Us humans exist because we can think around the borders of things. We can think beyond the box. And by the way, let's talk about the box for a second. Let's talk about how organizations, I talked about how curiosity gets wiped out in the educational system, right? And through standardized testing and standardized curriculums. I'm going to also argue that most corporations are also masters of wiping out curiosity, right? How do they do that? They put people in organizational boxes. You are this, you are that. And by golly, trying to cross over those boxes is darn near impossible. And so again, we do a lot of things that impact our ability to be even more human. And I think what AGI is going to do for us in the long run, and it's going to happen in pockets in certain industries. Maybe it'll happen in healthcare. Maybe it'll happen in manufacturing. Maybe it'll happen in. Right? It's going to happen in spaces. That AGI is actually going to take on some of the mundane tasks and free us up to do some of the more important ones. This is a poor analogy, but I'll tell you this right now: my little $5 calculator does square roots much better than I'm ever going to do square roots. Right? I'm never going to have to learn how to do a square root again. Right? That $5 calculator does it much better than me. You know what? It's okay. I can now worry about bigger problems than trying to calculate a square root.
Yeah, Bill, let's come back to the question bank which I had asked. Why I asked these questions, it's because there's a huge and a humongous gap between what machines and human can think about economics. Because it's all about the money which rolls in and out. Whether it's in the form of cryptocurrency, whether it's in the form of, let me just say, the new trend, the Bitcoin, which is coming up. It's just the amount of presence of mind which we are just going to put inside the work which we are going to do. I just wanted to ask you from the question bank, what is money according to you?
Well, look, so you raise a good question here, and let me riff on this a little second. So money is an expression of value, right? It's how we exchange value. And I want to come back to this value term because you talked about economics. Now, one thing that economics and AI hold in common is they have a utility function for determining how value is created. We know that an AI model that's optimized on one or two variables is going to create results that have all sorts of unintended consequences, very bad sort of results, right? We know that today, and that the best way to build a ethical AI model is to have a wide diversity of variables and functions against which it's going to optimize. That gets back to this conversation of what is value. Now, you think about value definition from an economics perspective. Sure, we got financial value, right? You got customer value, and you got operational value, right? Those are all pretty straightforward things that you can easily quantify. But we also have society value. How do you create opportunities for everybody? Right? We as a society are losing out because the next Einstein may be out there, but they can't get a chance to have an education. They can't have a chance to go through college. We have all kinds of environmental value factors here. We're just starting to scratch the surface of the fact around, the climate change issues and how it's impacting food supplies and people's lives. And I would also argue in there that there's another variable of value, and that's around spirituality. And I said there are two really key characteristics that humans have that machines don't have. I said one is curiosity, the other is compassion. I think compassion makes us stronger because compassion forces us to do the 1+1=3 thing, that we reach out like we're doing today, reach out with somebody who's all the way across our side of the world, who we've never met face to face, but we have a common bond around things. And because of that sense of compassion and integration, we're going to create something better than what any one of us, either you or I, could have done individually. And you start multiplying that across all kinds of different parties, the results are staggering. So you ask us, what is money? Money is a source of value, but value itself is not just money, right? Money may be value, but value is not just money. Money has all these other factors that one needs to consider from both an AI as well as an economics perspective.
But what is math about today? Because you just told your $5 calculator does square roots better than you. So now, when you think of an intelligent system being involved in doing the same old stock prediction, probably involving probability. It's not, I'm not saying it's a plausibilistic way of getting what your stock price is, but I just want your view on what is mathematics all about to you today. Because I've read papers, it's a kind of a cliche because I'm talking about AI, but I'll be giving an example of quantum computing. 1948 Shannon's paper. It's based on the communication and the bit flips which really happen all today. I just wanted you to give that view on what is mathematics all about today, because I read
So
papers and it's a huge way of difference, because math is derived, Fourier transform is still the same, but we still use the Fourier transform in some or the other way in other techniques. What is math to you?
math to me gives me math and statistics. I'm going to put them together. Gives me a way to determine the probability that something's going to happen. Okay. That's how I think about math and statistics. It gives me a probability. Now I know 1 + 1 = 2. That's a law. That's very easy. Unless you look at a man and a wife getting together and having a child, then 1 + 1 = 3. Wait a second, that violated the rule. Wait a second, right? So math and statistics in context of the discussion give and yield probabilities. And so when you have that, you have the ability to make, I use this term, intelligent, informed decisions. But we know that the human is not a logical, intelligent human creature, right? We're not intelligent. We're not logical. And if you need any proof of that, just go to Las Vegas and look at all the giant casinos they have there. My son used to like to say that math is a tax. No, he said gambling is a tax that's for people who are bad at math, right? Because what happens is there's all kinds of innate flaws, and we're a flawed creature. We're flawed on many fronts. I'm not just talking about the 7 deadly sins. I'm talking about just in mathematics alone. We have anchoring and sunk cost concepts and confirmation bias and self-justification. I mean, the list goes on and on, how humans are so poor at making informed decisions. And so what is math and statistics? Math and statistics gives you a vehicle for putting some informity, some intelligence around what's going to happen so that you can make more informed decisions. Now, again, as a human, we may decide to ignore that. We see humans ignoring the facts and data all the time because they have a firm belief on something. And so I feel like at times, as being a math major and a statistics person, that I'm fighting a losing battle in the world where people are constantly making incredibly stupid statements and incredibly bad decisions. I can't explain human nature other than the fact to say that we're not rational and we're not nearly as smart as we think we are.
Yeah, I know, but I just want you to give me that one view on what is the big deal behind the P and the NP problem statements in economics. Because we have the same concepts in AI. I still feel that AI was just being discovered. It was never being invented by an human being. Because when we see the origin of AI, it's from a paper from psychology, where Marvin Minsky just set up a lab based on that paper after he read that. There was a huge and a humongous deal whether AI was being invented or being discovered. So I just want you to give me that one insight about what's the actual deal about the P and the NP hard problem that we are facing in economics today.
I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know. I do love the provocative question: is AI created or is AI discovered? I think that's a great question. I got to be honest. I don't know how to answer that. I can see how in some aspects it's discovered, but I also think in many cases what we're seeing today is, well, there are inventions happening using deep learning, trying to replicate the human mind. I don't have an answer. I think it's a great question. I don't know how to answer that question. I think it's very provocative. I plead the fifth, and I don't know how to respond to it.
In a recent podcast, Vishwash asked me a very provocative question. Did I believe that AI was discovered or invented? Now, this question made me pause. Did I believe that AI was discovered or invented? And I told him I couldn't answer at the time. I said, I don't know. Let me think about it. So here's my thought on this. AI, machine learning, and all the other disciplines around it are all based on mathematical theories. And if we believe that mathematical theory and statistical theories, things like 1 plus 1 equals 2 and averages, if we believe that they are laws, then to a certain extent, you've got to believe laws that were discovered, then you have to believe that AI is a law as well and wasn't invented, but it was discovered. It's something that's very natural in our environment. Mathematics is very natural. Statistics is very natural. And so my proposition is that AI wasn't invented as much as it was discovered. In the same way that there are laws that govern chemistry and electricity and metallurgy and other sort of disciplines, I believe there are mathematical formulas and laws that govern AI. So the answer to that question, I believe, is that AI was not invented, but AI is a natural consequence of our environment, and consequently, it was discovered. Cheers.
No, but what's the deal with the P and the NP hard problem that we are facing in economics today? Because it's the same with math.
So explain to me what you mean by the P and NP problem.
A polynomial and a non-deterministic polynomial function. That's what we.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to even think about that question. I'm sorry. I've never thought about it from that perspective.
Because I thought, okay, to some extent we can actually get that. Sorry for that.
No, that's okay. Those are good questions, though. I mean, all the questions that are asked, I shouldn't have answers to. I want people to ask me questions that make me think, and I'm not afraid to say, I don't know. That's a good question. So you've certainly asked some questions I don't know how to answer. I'm still caught up on the one about, is AI discovered or is AI invented? That's a really provocative question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you this one question. What's the actual thing which is going behind the digital transformation that we are looking? What's the thrill of building such models for digital transformation? Is it just that book which you are just writing, or is it just that people who are just wanting to be the right person in an organization? What's that all about? Building a model, having a best digital transformation that we are just dreaming about.
So let's first off talk about digital transformation, because I think digital transformation is an aspiration and not a goal. And what I mean by that is you can almost replace the word digital with cyber or networked or distributed. There's going to be other transformations that come upon us, right? Blockchain, quantum, and we're in a world of constant transformation. So I don't believe that we can ever get there, because the minute we get to the end of transformation, the next one has popped up. And what happens is the economic value curve is constantly being riffed. So if that is truly the world we operate in which transformation is the ongoing process, then I think that what organizations need to do is they need to build a culture of continuous learning and adapting. How do you continuously learn what's happening in the world so you can make adaptive problems? That kind of organization is one where the smartest people in the organization don't sit at the top of the organization. The people who have the most insights into what is happening in the world are those who are at the front lines of customer engagement and operational transactions, right? They're at the front lines of the organization. And so there's a very tricky transformation that organizations need to have where if they believe that their secret to their success is his ability to continuously learn and adapt, they've got to soon learn that the people who are going to drive that are the people who are at the front lines, who are learning and adapting and figure out how to aggregate up those learnings. I worked at one company, Sequent Computers, and we had an org chart, and the org chart was inverted. what happened is you had all the frontline people here and the CEO was down here. And the frontline people above them were all the customers. So the customers were the very top of the value chain, then the front line. And he felt it was the responsibility of the front line to take their learnings and to ripple them down to the bottom of the organization. And the people, the CEO, the CXO, their responsibility was to ripple up and knock out the walls that hindered them from learning. That is an interesting way to think about what are the expectations of the frontline people and what are the responsibilities of the senior management in enabling those frontline people to continuously learn and adapt.
Yeah, when you told about the frontline people, the customers are the key in that company, and the CXO comes in the bottom, and now their expectations is to work according to the customers. So now let me just give you this one scenario. We are all working virtual now, all being remote accessed with the systems there in somewhere else in our office, and all these things are happening. So now what's the effect of economics through this pandemic? you know Economics has seen a lot of shifts and turns here and there, but what's the actual effect of COVID on economics? Because companies were not able to go to a customer and get their what's their actual need, or else employees were not able to go and do their fullest potential. What's the actual effect that we are facing because of the COVID or the pandemic that we have faced now?
So I'm going to argue that we still, even though we're working remotely, we still have the ability to work with customers to identify, validate value, and prioritize the sources of value creation. It takes more work and more preparation to do it from a remote perspective, but I also think it opens the door for us to talk to more people, because what remote work has done for us is, to a certain extent, it's eliminated the time and distance constraints. You and I can talk now. You're located, I don't know, almost 12 time zones away from me, right? You're other side of the world. But there's nothing that's preventing us from having this kind of conversation where we're learning from each other. So to me, the value creation opportunity, if you think what economics is all about, economics is about the creation and distribution of value and wealth. That's what it is. The ability to augment what we do today with more remote capabilities means we have a chance to reach more people across longer distances, to identify, codify, and operationalize those sources of value creation. The companies that are going to be successful, they're still going to seek out how to identify value from their customers, but they're just now going to have a better tool in their hands that's going to require them to do that. But as I said before, to do this means you need a lot more preparation. Too many companies and too many organizations that people just show up to the customer. They're not very well prepared. They haven't thought through in detail what they're trying to accomplish, but they figure like, well, we're in a room. I got whiteboards. I got flip charts. We're going to figure it out. That doesn't work remotely. You got to be very nailed down. You need to have a clear process, and you need to leverage all the collaboration tools that are available remote, whether it's Zoom or Mural or Jamboards, whatever else, right? They have these collaboration tools that still allow us to brainstorm with customers to identify those sources of value creation.
Yeah, Bill, when you said that it's all about the value that a man can derive, that's what money is all about. That's what valuation is all about. That's what economics is all about, according to you. But I just
Yeah.
want to ask you this one question, because you have seen a lot of people, you have experienced a lot of people uh, through your journey, whether it's in the industry, whether it's in the academic field now, which you are actually working. So I just want to ask you this one question: what's that one flaw that really makes that person who is capable incapable? That means he will just be flawed in front of everybody just because of that one reason. What's that?
Wow. Okay. I think the one thing that inhibits people from reaching their greatest potential is they're not humble. Now, think about being humble. Humble means that you're not afraid to say, I don't know. I don't have the answer. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to contemplate a different perspective, right? Humble is a very powerful enabler. And I will say that I have been very blessed in my last 10 years to work with a data science team, in particular, my chief data scientist, who may be the most humble person in the world. Now, when I work with him, he is always deferring to other people who have made him who he is. But I know he is a great data scientist and even a better human because he's a humble person who's not afraid to admit I don't know something, who's not afraid to ask questions, who's not afraid to be wrong.
I just wanted to ask you this one question. Is the mathematicians have more edge over ML, or else is it the people in the management have more edge over the machine learning? Because mathematicians can give an insight of what data is, but management people know how to handle the team. So, code is available in the GitHub. You can copy it. Documentation is available. You can just go there, grab some code, just do some work. But who has the actual edge in this deployment of production, probably in the actual development also? Who has that actual edge of learning machine learning easy?
So
Anybody?
yeah, so management is the one who realizes the value of it. And when I think about that, I think about the transformation that the data science discipline needs to go through to transform from outputs to outcomes. Now, what I mean by that is using ML and deep learning and other things, we can build models that deliver all kinds of propensity scores and very, very thoughtful, informed analytic outputs. But if you can't put the outputs into action to drive results, if we can't transform outputs into outcomes that drive results, then it's for naught. Why bother building ML models if no one's going to use them? So what happens is that the value process, I believe, has to start with management and their commitment to leveraging whatever comes out of the ML models to actually change the behavior of their organization and change their behavior with respect to the kinds of decisions and action they're going to take. So to a certain extent, you can't realize value until you've gotten that management buy-in. So they're the big enablers. They're also the biggest hindrance, because if they don't do it, then the ML models are no good. Now, once they bought in, now the data scientists, the ML models, the reinforcement learning model, now they all are powerful because they have an audience who's ready to digest what's telling them so they can turn the outputs into outcomes that deliver results. So in your conversation, if you don't get management to buy into this thing, that if they don't buy into the fact that what comes out of ML as outputs can help drive better outcomes, you're lost, right? You're lost. And that's one of the biggest problems of data science today, is that the management executives, they want data science teams, and I know how many projects you've been involved in where somebody will hand you a data set and say, tell me what's valuable inside there. Well, how do I know what valuable is? I don't know what value is until I know what kind of outcomes you're trying to drive. You're trying to improve customer retention? Okay, I can show you that here. You're trying to improve cross-sell? Oh, that's here as well, right? But unless I know the outcomes they seek and their willingness to apply what I've done from the analytics, it's all for naught.
Yeah, I know. But it's very hard to predict. Whether it's mathematics or economics, concepts keeps revolving in and out because
No. We can predict. It's not hard to predict. Now, it's hard to predict with a level of confidence, right? It's hard to predict if we
yes,
thoroughly understand the costs of false positives and false negatives. We can build models that predict. That's not hard to do, relatively speaking. What it is it's hard to build models that are at a sufficient level of accuracy and predictability that fully addresses the cost of the false positive and false negatives, so that the management team feels comfortable and confident to take the results of those predictions and go forward. Right? We're never going to see a 100% prediction. If we have somebody who promises a 100% prediction, they're not a data scientist. They're a snake oil salesman, right? They're a con man. And so what we need to teach our management team is we can make predictions, but they're never going to be 100%. 95% accuracy, 90%, 85. It all depends on the situation. And we need to train them to think not in line of absolutes, but in lines of probabilities with a confidence level around that takes into account the cost of the false positives and the false negatives.
Yeah, but I just want to ask you this one question, because everybody is behind technology, whether it's a bioinformatician who should be working with a microscope and probably some amount of softwares which he should be working. He's now applying ML techniques into his problem statements, because everybody knows that it's going to ease my work, and it's big data at the end of the day, which is the new trend. Whether it's, yeah.
Excuse me. You're safe. It's not COVID.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you this one question, because everybody is behind big data, everybody is behind machine learning, everybody is aware of the potential of what an AI is all about, and everybody knows what AI can do in their field. I just want to ask you this one question. It's, how has technology been an influence in making false decisions? Because it's been implemented in economics in a wide varieties. LSTMs was supposed to be used in temporal data, but at the end of the day, it's also being used in stock market analysis also. So how has technology been an influence in making wrong decisions? You can give some examples for it and you can explain it.
Well, first off, I'm going to take issue with the fact that everybody is behind and understands the potential of ML. I actually think it's the vast majority of people don't understand the potential of ML.
Why?
In AI.
Because I see a lot of nature papers which are coming out based on deep learning and machine learning.
The vast majority of people I talk to still don't understand what it does for them and why that's important. Again, it gets back to that previous statement about understanding how to work and live within a world of probabilities. We have management people, we have decision makers who don't deal well with probabilities, which is, by the way, is why they like BI tools and reports. How much did you sell last month? I know exactly how much I sold last month. I know exactly, right? How much are you going to sell next month? Well, I can give you a prediction with some confidence level, but that's not what they're used to, right? There's a probability of being that wrong, but I know exactly what I sold last month. And so we have this challenge, this mentality challenge of people who are used to looking at the absolutes of what happened and struggle with looking at the predictions of what's likely to happen. The mind is not wired that way. It's not normal. So when we say that everybody understands the potential of ML, they can't if they don't understand the ramifications of probabilities, that you might make a decision that's wrong. You might buy a stock that goes right down in the toilet, right? You are going to make mistakes. And let's be really honest. Organizations don't exist because people make mistakes. In fact, this gets back to that curiosity question we talked about much earlier on, right? Is that the only way that an organization can truly learn, can truly break out of the box that it sits in, is if you're willing to try things, different and new things, and be wrong. As an organization, if you don't have enough might moments, you'll never have any breakthrough moments. But the organizations aren't good. Think about how you're too young for this, right? But when we were building data warehouses, right? Data warehouse was an onerous process, very hard, dimensional models and using relational databases that were never designed for massive table scans, all the things that made it really, really hard, right? If you built that model, that relational model, that data warehouse model, you built it wrong and it didn't work, you got fired. It took you 2 to 3 years to get it right. And it was the most brittle damn thing in the world. And the data warehouse manager's worst nightmare is when somebody would knock on their door and say, I want to add a data source. Oh my God, I got to start from scratch, basically. So the world of data and analytics, if we look at data being data warehouses and analytics being BI, we're used to dealing with absolutes. It was easy for management to understand. Now we're moving into an entirely different world. And so I think we have this challenge, and it's a more than management challenge than it is a data science challenge of getting people to I know people overuse this term, but how do I get executives to think like a data scientist? Now, when I say that, I'm not telling executives to become a data scientist. I'm telling them that you have to think like a data scientist. You got to be willing to try different ideas. You got to be willing to try and explore. You got to be willing to fail and learn. That's not natural for these executives. They have not been raised that way. But that's where we're going. We try to teach executives to think like a data scientist. We're trying to get them to embrace the power of exploration and discovery and trying and failing and learning again. Anyway, you got me all over the place here in that one. But that's, to me, that's the biggest challenge of getting organizations to really understand the power and potential of ML.
But what's the breakthrough that we are waiting in order to give this world that actual decision making capability that we are actually desiring for? What's that breakthrough that we are waiting? It can be hardware, it can be software. What's that breakthrough at the end of the day?
I don't believe there is one. I don't believe there's a breakthrough moment. I think it's going to be gradually, as a younger generation who understands the world of working in probabilities, a younger generation who's been brought up to embrace diversity and exploration, to embrace learning through failure, that'll happen gradually. I don't think there's a breakthrough moment. There's too many old executives out there who are wed to their ways. And here's one thing that humans do really poorly. The one thing that humans do very poorly is unlearning. Humans don't unlearn very well. Once you've got something you believe is the right way to do it, you will seek out, you will self-justify everything you can find to make sure that that stays there. I will tell you that my most difficult unlearning moment in my life is when I went, after spending 25 years in the BI data warehouse space, dealing with the absolutes of BI reports, and then going to Yahoo, which is all a world of Hadoop and data science, and going to a world about probabilities. Everything that I had learned in the BI data warehouse space was wrong. It wasn't like I was able to make a small transition. It wasn't like data science was BI 2.0. It was an entirely different creature. And I struggled with that. I struggled a long time trying to unlearn things that I thought were gospel in order to embrace a new way to think. So do I think there's a magic bullet that's going to get people to shift the way they think? Nope. I think it's going to happen gradually because a new generation is coming up, and hopefully the education system is going to be in place to help them embrace the power of the scientific method of exploring, trying, testing, failing, learning, and trying again.
But what do you feel about mathematics? Is it a psychological game that we are just playing? Because if I don't have the presence of mind, I can't write even an equation because that's the requirement of the hour.
No, mathematics is important. I mean, a lot of what we're doing in the world of, supervised, unsupervised machine learning and deep learning, it's all based on math, which is good because that gives us a solid discipline that we can work on. We know these mathematical formulas are correct. It doesn't necessarily mean that the results they produce are going to be predictive at 100%, but at least we can have a conversation around the engine that drove that. It's a mathematically based engine, but even then we have to be careful because mathematics is so definitive in what it produces and statistics is not, that we err sometimes in talking about math unless we need to spend more time talking about statistics and probabilities. In here in the US, baseball is a big sport, right? And we have batting averages. And if you have a batter who's batting, 350, they're considered a great, let's say 333, right? They're batting 333, which means they get a hit one of every 3 times at bat, right? Well, it isn't like they get a hit, no hit, no hit, get a hit, no hit, no hit, get a hit, no hit, no hit, right? It's not how it works, right? We know there's variability. They're batting 350, but there's variability and that happens. One game, they may go 0 for 3, right? The next game, they may go 3 for 3, and then they go 0 for 3 again, right? And so while mathematics is the foundation for a lot of what we do, which is great, probability is probably a better conversation because it prepares people for the inevitable variability in the results that comes out, that nothing is predictable with 100% confidence.
Yeah, Bill, I just wanted to ask you this one question because we talked a lot about stocks. We talked a lot about probability now. I think probably some more questions are there on the analytics and the data crunching part. But I just wanted to ask you this one question. Who is the visible and the invisible hand in the market today? It's not, I'm not talking about bulls and the bears who just come up in the stock market all of a sudden. I'm just asking you, who is the visible and the invisible hand in the market today? In order to lift it, in order to drop it, who's that?
We are. I mean, we are. I'm sorry. There is no one invisible hand. It's the mass of people. It's like we saw with GameStop, right? It isn't one person who turned that into a huge economic opportunity of growth for one group of people and a fail. It was the mass of people acting together. It the economic hand has always been around the mass of people and what they do in combination and how they move as a mass changes things. It's like back in the 1880s when buffalo roamed across the West, right? When the buffalo moved, they moved in such mass that they actually changed the landscape they ran across because they moved in such mass and size that they had the ability to just change the landscape itself. It's always been the mass of people and how they act with things. So I don't think there's a single hand, invisible hand, as much as there is this group dynamics. And groups move very unpredictably at times. You can get a group to move very bizarrely. They can be influenced and scared quite easily. But over time, it is that mass of people who are actually swaying the marketplace. And let's go another one here. Let's talk about COVID. How some groups of people were adamant, don't have them, about wearing masks, being very conscious about it. And yet other people who were adamant about not wearing masks, in spite of the fact that the math and the science said wearing masks is smart. So again, in this case, you had two invisible hands working across each other, one saying wear masks and one not. Now, over time, what's happened is the people who are wearing masks has grown. Right, the group has started to become realizing that, well, this mask does make a difference, right? Part of it is more and more findings. Part of it is people on the non-mask side dying and having friends of theirs dying, right? So this invisible hand is all driven by people and their internal beliefs. Facts and data can help influence how that moves, but it can't control it entirely.
Yeah, it's all about the facts. It's all about getting that right thought and the right process. But I just wanted to ask you this one question where there is involvement of nurture of economics is involved, because we are at the age where, you know, uh, of course, I can compare you as a person who is from the Stone Age to the millennials who are accessible, who have a great amount of access to the tech today. But I just wanted to ask you this one question because what really got you into the data science? Because it's economics, which is supposed to be the subject of nerds who just need to stay in front of the books and just make some predictions in such a way that the world collapses. Two, making decisions through the machines. What actually was that influence that you had? Because
I
your degree is in BA, honors with computer science and mathematics, and your master's doesn't even catch up to the data science because it's MBA, Masters of Business Administration, but nowhere in the sync with the data science. How is this romantic journey with the data science starting with your life?
So I've always been a fan of analytics. I grew up a big baseball fan, basketball as well, but baseball fan. So I got indoctrinated into some very basic statistical concepts, batting averages and ERAs, and you started to learn some basics. And what I liked about numbers and probabilities was my ability to predict might do well, right? And there was a game that we played when I was younger. It was called Stratomatic Baseball, and it had very detailed probabilities on each player and each situation. And if you had a good understanding of probabilities, it gave you a huge unfair advantage playing your friends because you knew, over time what these factors meant. So I've always had this really fascination with using data to uncover probabilities that I could use to make better decisions. One of the things that occurred to me again in my college days was that I was realizing that if you can make better decisions, you can derive new sources of value. You know, you can attack real problems. And not only in graduate school, my MBA be around business, and I took an economics class in there as well. But when I went to work at Arthur Andersen, it all became about, well, I'll actually say this. My experience at Procter and Gamble was really the eye opener for me. Where back in the 1980s, they were trying to become data driven in their decision making. And I learned firsthand because at Procter and Gamble in 1987 and 88, we built what I think was the very first data warehouse project. I ran that project. It was a combination of Procter and Gamble's data along with Walmart's point of sale data. And by using that data, we could figure out which promotions are going to be most effective, how to price things, right? We knew so much about the customer. And I was just amazed how much more effective we could make our marketing and product development and merchandising decisions through all that data. So I quickly started to realize that the real value behind data and analytics isn't the ability to do those things, but it's the idea that you can create new sources of customer, product, and operational value by understanding what's buried in the data around the problems you're trying to solve. And so it became, I think for me, it became a journey. It wasn't maybe a single point that sort of cued it on for me. It's been a continuous journey where I've always sought to think, how do I leverage data and analytics to provide more value? And I get back to the Yahoo moment. That was the point where I realized when I can go from descriptive reports and dashboards to predictions and prescriptions about what's likely to happen, now we're talking about making real money. Right now I can have huge impact. And the tools finally caught up to what I was trying to do. Right? Hadoop allowed us to get down to that very low level of granularity. What makes big data so interesting isn't the volume of data, it's that granularity. It's that ability to mine those very detailed profiles in every one of my customers and use that to figure out what ads to show them, where to put the ads, what audiences to sell it, right? All these sort of things that came out. So again, I guess you would say my journey was a progression of experiences where the technology kept getting more relevant to me, but I never lost sight of the fact that at the end of the day, it isn't having data and performing analytics that's the source of value. It's the application of the insights you find in the data to the organization's business cases where you derive sources of value.
Yeah, it's all about the insights.
I'm going to have to drop in about 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yep.
I'll just.
Sorry, I've got something else coming up here at the bottom of the hour.
Yeah, fine. Sure. I'll just give you that. But what's the most beautiful concept that you have come across in any one of the concepts that you have been working through?
So the one concept, the one discipline that has really caught my imagination is around design thinking. And what I like about design thinking, if we believe that data science exists to create new sources of value, design thinking allows me to speak the language of my customer to understand where those sources of value are created. So personas and stakeholder maps and customer journey maps and service design templates, there's a bunch of tools available for me and techniques and approaches where I can start to understand more thoroughly my customer. Because the only person in the organization who actually is a source of value is the customer. And so what I love about design thinking is it has forced me to walk in the shoes of my customer, to understand the entirety of their journey, not just when they use my product, but what happens before they use my product, what actually directs them to using my product, and what happens after they use my product. What is the afterglow experience? And so when you start to embrace design thinking with an economics concept, you can build journey maps that show you all the points of value creation. It also can show you all the points of value inhibiting, right? All the impediments to value creation, which, by the way, can also be sources of value creation if you can eliminate those impediments. So to me, the real change for me has been in the last couple of years, the growth of and maturity of the design thinking discipline as a discipline that really helps when you marry it with data science and economics to create all new kinds of new sources of value.
Yeah, but I just wanted to ask you this last question because world is moving more towards the frameworks. Because when we see resumes, it will be filled with tools like TensorFlow, Keras, sklearn, OpenCV, and all these, right? I just wanted to ask you, what's your view on the present frameworks which are available in the market, whether it's open sourced or proprietary? And also, I just want you to comment on this one thing: is the technology good enough to do the number crunching today?
No, it's not. No, it's not. But here's the beauty of the technology. It's continuously evolving, right? TensorFlow was magnitudes better than what we had before TensorFlow. Now, TensorFlow, I don't think even existed like 4 or 5 years ago. It's fairly new. And 4 or 5 years from now, it may be replaced by, something else, quantum TensorFlow, whatever else, right? We're seeing this constant evolution of the tools, which is marvelous. If the tools weren't evolving and becoming more powerful, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. So I do think we're going to continue to see the evolution of the tools. The companies, though, that are really smart, and Google is brilliantly smart, they're realizing that TensorFlow in of itself isn't sufficient. I mean, think about TensorFlow. Probably Google's single most important technology, right? It powers their search engine, it powers their marketplaces, it powers everything, and they open source it. Now, if the old school model would have said that's lunacy, what the old school would have done is to put all kinds of patents around it so no one else could use it. This is Google's differentiation. But what Google realized is that by open sourcing TensorFlow, they allow more people to use it, and the more people who use it, the more powerful TensorFlow becomes. And so what Google is betting on isn't the fact that they own TensorFlow. What Google is betting on is that they are the best in the world at using TensorFlow to create new sources of value. They are challenging the world to be better than us. We're going to give everybody the same tools, the same tool. And we're challenging you to be better than us and using that tool to create value. And no one's been able to beat Google at it. They're the best because they think it's not just about the technology. It's about how they're using it. And I'll tell you right now, the Google data science team are big believers in design thinking. That's one of the reasons why I started getting interested. It's because one of their senior data scientists introduced me to the world of design thinking. And after he did that, I realized I'm missing a whole big dimension that's needed in order to drive that value creation process.
Well, thank you so much for this amazing podcast. It's like probably 60 minutes of talk which I had, but like an amazing one because it's an eye opener for me because I'm writing a book on which is called as the Notebook of an Data Science Enthusiast, and I'll be adding the podcast as a link there so that I can give some insights. And I wanted somebody who is from an economics background or so. Thank you so much for giving such a wonderful podcast. For me, it's an amazing thing for me to have you in my podcast. Not because you have written the books which you have given to the world, it's just because you are the person who I really wanted to be doing podcast with. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And hey, I appreciate the creativity in your questions. They were great. You did a lot of homework, and you weren't afraid to ask me questions that I didn't know how to answer. And hopefully the ones I couldn't answer, I said, I don't know, I need to do my homework.
Sure. I think probably if you can give me a snippet afterwards, like I'll send you those 2 questions which you could not answer.
Yeah.
So if you can send me a snippets afterwards, I can just merge it here in this podcast, which I'll be adding some overlays to this video also, and I'll be merging it with that. So it will
Sure.
be an honor for me to have you answer those questions in my podcast.
Sounds fair enough. Let me see what I can do.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you so much for this amazing podcast.
Now go to bed.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.